I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight TV, we're delighted to welcome back one of my favorite guests. His name is Jonathan Strong. He is the author of a thought-provoking book. It is called Science Meets Faith: The Survival of Consciousness. This book challenges conventional scientific wisdom, exploring evidence for life after death, the mind-brain connection, and hidden realities as well. Are we just physical bodies, or is there more to it? Right now on Spotlight, we're going to take a deep dive into the mysteries of consciousness with Jonathan. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank our team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below this interview. Jonathan, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Thank you for inviting me on your show, Logan. Good to see you.
Good to see you, my friend. Throughout your book, there is a theme that the mind and the brain are basically separate. What the brain does, thinking, perceiving, reflecting, memorizing, exists, but separate from the mind and the brain. They're actually two entities, if you will. Explain that mind-brain disconnect or connection.
Yes, well, Logan, the concept of the mind existing separate and independent from the brain, I'm sure would be pretty preposterous to many, particularly, in the scientific community. After all, we know only too well that, the brain exists. Ask any neurosurgeon or pathologist. But no MRS scanner has ever seen a soul or a spirit. And yet, it's only since the advert 300 years ago with Newtonian science that we've got into this mind lock of things only exist if we can measure them, test them, put them in a laboratory, see them. But, there's knowledge that the ancients, thousands of years ago, had that science is now sort of rediscovering or coming to understand. The ancient Greeks, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Hindus, 4,000 years ago, talked about every language has its own word: soul, spirit, psyche, from which we get psychiatry and psychoanalysis. The problem is, Logan, that in the scientific community, it's not, I don't know about in the States, but particularly in Europe and in Britain, it's not the done thing to talk. Professional people don't talk about their religious faith. They don't talk about things like, the spirit or the soul or after death, because they feel it's a threat to their professionalism. But in the States, I'm glad to say, there are many, many people, great minds like Dr. Brian Weiss, a psychiatrist of many, many years' experience. There's a woman psychiatrist, Dr. Sakuntala Modi, who has put her reputation on the line and come out. I mean, in the States, all over the world, Logan, billions and billions of pounds of dollars are spent on drugs. I wish I had shares in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm sure you do. In the States alone, there must be millions of people suffering from depression, anxiety. I know all over Europe it's the thing. And, physicians can only mask the symptoms by prescribing Prozac and all sorts. And these drugs, antipsychotic drugs, don't really help the patient. In fact, sometimes they have suicidal effects. And many, many medical people now, particularly in the States, are pioneering new ways. The ancients knew that healing is not just healing the body; it's healing the whole person. It's only in the last couple of centuries that we think about everything about a human being is physical, and that when we die, that's it. But the ancients had ancient wisdom. And this is something that's been rediscovered. Quantum physics, would you believe, of all things, quantum mechanics, talks about consciousness as being an inherent part of everything, even matter. Now, this takes some getting your head round. Yeah. But what my book is really asking people to do is think outside the box. It doesn't matter what your religious faith is. You have to hang on to what your beliefs are, but at the same time, you have to be open. Science is constantly evolving, and so should theological thinking too. And I'm happy to say there are many, many great minds now are applying themselves to this problem, because we can't just heal the body. There are no physician ever signs a death certificate as the cause of death being stress. But any physician will tell you that stress is the biggest single killer, because, exactly, heart disease and so many things, because we're not healing. We're not dealing with the whole person. There's more, there's as Shakespeare said in Hamlet, there's more in heaven and earth than we'll ever know. And it's very, very true.
Exactly. And as Helen Keller said, the most real things in this world can neither be seen nor heard. They must be touched. And I think that Absolutely. Goes to your point as well. And I also think it's important to point out that the brain and mind are different. The brain is an organ, just like the heart, but the mind is absolutely a separate phenomenon. Let's talk a little bit about consciousness, that which survives the body after death. Talk to us a little bit about whether you're talking about the soul here or the spirit here or what.
Well, I mean, as I say, yes, I mean, every language has its own term. Incidentally, the Buddhists never talk about spirit. They talk about mind. It is the mind that is the essential being, the person, The ancient Greeks use the word psyche. We use the word spirit, soul, but really it can come down, the quantum physicists use the term consciousness, awareness. That Descartes, the French mathematician, who applied himself to this question, he talks about the essential I. Psychologists use the word ego, but it's that essential I. It's baffled the finest brains throughout history, that we have a body, we have a mind, but there must be, as Descartes said, there must be an essential I, the me, that gives rise to the thought before anything else. And as I say, quantum physicists, they argue that consciousness exists in everything throughout the entire universe. The whole universe is a complete network of wavelengths in terms of vision. Now, interestingly enough, an Indian Hindu doctor in the States who practiced medicine for over 40 years, and in his later life went back to the Hindu scriptures, and we find that 5,000 years ago in the Hindu scriptures, they talked about the universe as being one great network of information, a network which we as human beings can key into. And of course, it's no surprise. Indian fakirs, holy men, monastics. There's always been people who meditate, Buddhists who meditate, people who lock themselves away from all the distractions of the world, the noise and everything, and concentrate. And as Dr. Brian Weiss in the States, and many men like him, have written books about this, that we have to get in touch with our inner selves through meditation, through various methods, but we have to get in touch with our inner selves, because, as I say, depression, anxiety, psychosomatic illnesses affect millions and millions, particularly in the pace of life in the Western world as it is. And this idea that consciousness exists in all things, and if you the whole universe is consciousness, and the very mind, the very center, the epicenter of that consciousness is, for want of a better word, God.
Hmm.
Theologians and people who have a religious faith use the word God.
Yeah.
Scientists may use the word psyche, consciousness. It comes back to the same thing. That's something, one of the greatest neurosurgeons and a winner of the Nobel Prize, Sir John Eccles, he came under a lot of criticism and controversy, but he always believed, he said, and I quote, that he's more to man than just flesh and blood. There's more to man than that which we can see or analyze or cut up in a laboratory. There is a link. Also, the great psychoanalyst Carl Jung, argued the same thing. He was a renowned atheist, like his colleague and mentor Freud. But after a near-death experience, Jung himself argued that there is something more to us. There is than just flesh and blood. And of course, as I say, all the ancients, all the wisdom of all the ancients right throughout the ages. It's only with the advent of this, Newtonian physics, which was a wonderful thing with the discovery of gravity and so on and so forth, but the law of gravity. But having said that, in the Western world, we are in this mind block that, if we can't see, touch it, measure it, well, it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
I would remind people, as I say in my book, the ancient Greeks talked about atoms, but it took over 2,000 years in 1931 for two young scientists to invent a microscope that could see things 400 times in expansion. So now when you take a blood sample, it's no problem, you see everything that's going on there. But for 2,000 years, atoms is only a theory. Any fourth grade student can looking at school can tell you about atoms and molecular structure, and yet it would have been a mystery for all those thousands of years. So what very often science has hoo-hawed and stuck its nose up and said, well, what proof is there of that? Look at black holes, a good example. When I was at school, if you'd have asked your teacher, Logan, what is a black hole, you'd have got a certain answer. If you'd have asked 20, 30 years later, you've got another answer. And even now, if you get 20 scientists or physicists in a room and ask what is a black hole, you'll probably get 20 different answers because we simply don't know.
Right.
What we do know is that they're there, but we don't know what they are, what they do, why they're there. So one day science, hopefully in your lifetime, if not mine, science will have the answer. But science, and hence the theme of my book and the title of my book, Science Meets Faith, because there doesn't have to be a dichotomy. There doesn't have to be. It's only in recent centuries that this has happened. It's interesting. The ancient Greek language doesn't have a separate word for knowledge and science. It uses the word episteme, from which we get epistemological, of course, because episteme is knowledge, but it's also science. Plato and Aristotle would have argued, that all knowledge is science, and all science is knowledge, and all knowledge is science. There was never this separation, and we've got to get back to this.
Absolutely.
Idea that.
We're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you about out-of-body experiences. Is this somebody simply just dreaming or a different mental state? Tell us about that.
Well, I myself, many years ago when I was young, I had a similar experience, and I never thought anymore. I never talked about it. Most people don't. They don't want people to think they're a bit funny in the head. Many books, again in the States, many doctors and physicians have come out. Many of them have had themselves. They were skeptical. They thought their patients were just dreaming or hallucinating, until many of them had these experiences themselves. For example, let us say one experience that surgeons talk about is when they've operated on someone in the theatre, Logan, and the next morning they come round and they say, well, Logan, the operation went very well, and how do you feel? And Logan starts describing what happened in the operating theatre. And not only that, but what conversations went between, oh, yes, I heard you say to the anaesthetist, 10 more cc's of adrenaline, we're losing him. And this is something that has baffled surgeons, very often. Many, many thousands of people have out-of-body experiences, but they find they don't talk about them because they don't want to be ridiculed. If they tell their colleagues or friends, they get laughed at, and of course, most physicians would say, oh, well, of course, you're dreaming or hallucinating. Well, when your heart is stopped in a hospital and the electrocardiograph shows no rhythm at all, and the electroencephalogram shows that your brain, there is no function whatsoever, then you are clinically dead. So when the skeptic says, oh, well, I mean, out-of-body experiences, well, of course, it's hallucinating, it's dreaming. Well, Logan, I have to tell you that when you're dead, you neither dream nor you hallucinate, So again, the skeptics really don't, the skeptics' objection to this just simply doesn't hold water. But I'm glad to say that this last 10, 20 years, again, it's the States that is pioneering this. So many surgeons, neuroscientists are coming out, not only with reports and accounts of their patients' out-of-body experiences, but also of their own personal experiences. And it's life-changing. Whatever your opinions before, you might have been a religious person, you might have been an atheist, a skeptic, but if you have an out-of-body experience, you're never the same again.
Absolutely. It's a mind changer. It's a game changer. Much like this book, Jonathan Strong's book is called Science Meets Faith, The Survival of Consciousness. The book challenges conventional wisdom. It explores evidence for life after death, the mind-brain connection, and hidden realities as well. He moves beyond the fact that we are simply physical bodies and says and argues successfully that there is a whole lot more to it. You'll love this book. It is absolutely fascinating. It's a great blend of science, faith, theory, and philosophy, all melded together in one powerful book. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan.
My pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.